Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
And I'm your co-host, Rich Gear, here with you. And Doug has come up with a very interesting subject about insects.
Pernicious
insects and trees and all kinds of neat stuff like that. So, Doug, why don't you get us into it?
What I did a few weeks ago was, as part of my work, I had a chance to go up north to Gaylord area, and where we watched a logging operation, and it was a pretty interesting time because we met with one of the foresters, and they explained to us why they were taking out certain trees and why they were leaving other trees and what they were trying to do in terms of managing the forest. And of course we've had some problems in Michigan here for the past year with something called the emerald ash borer, where we've had pretty much our entire population of ash trees within the Lower Peninsula decimated with this insect.
I can speak directly to that. I had an ash tree in the back of my yard out here, fell over and took a power line out because it was dead because of the emerald ash borer, and then I have two other ash trees that also died, and I'm not sure when they died. They were dying probably before I ever moved in here, but yeah, they're all gone. So, Doug, do you know if the emerald ash borer, have they told, is there anything at this juncture, at this point in time, that is going to alleviate some of that, or is the ash tree pretty much gone?
Well, apparently there are some places where they sprayed for it, and they still have the living ash trees. There's also some that they found that were resistant, and were able to get beyond this whole thing. So and they're studying these trees that were resistant to find out, well, why did these trees survive rather than the other ones?
Because ultimately, if we can get a tree that is genetically able to resist it, we're better off than trying to spray them all the time. Sometimes you have to do that no matter what, but I know that I had to do a treatment in some pine trees. It was some beetle, I think, or it was an insect that would burrow into the surface of the bark and lay a larvae in there. And then they hatch, they'd fly away, the tree wouldn't be dead then they come back and they burrow into it again, and that kills the tree. And I had to spend a pretty penny on getting those things out, because on my property I got probably 100 pine trees out here, the white pines. And this is some insect that either came from Colorado or Canada. And so it didn't come from China for once, but because I don't know, where did that ash borer come from? Was that Europe?
It came from China.
Yeah.
So it came in through Detroit area with the lumber that I think it was just the pallets that they used and they were infested with the ash borers.
And when did that come in? The 60s, the 70s?
No, it was just recently. And
so it's like the reason I've heard of the emerald ash borer as long as I can remember. I've heard about that insect.
I think you're thinking of the Dutch elm disease.
No, that's another one. But I've heard the emerald ash borer. I've heard for quite a long. Yeah, the Dutch elm disease. Well, there's another one, Doug. That kind of wiped out. I mean, we used to live on Elmwood, right?
Elmwood, yeah.
I don't remember any elms on that street,
I remember the elms.
Do you? I don't remember.
But they're long gone, and when we were up north, they were saying in the stand that we were looking at of trees that the beech trees were the ones that they needed to take out because of the beech bark disease. And they were describing what was going on with that. They said, well, these beech, we might as well take them out because otherwise they'll fall over. They'll be a wasted resource. And at least at this point in time, they can be used for paper or pulpwood or something like that. So they're trying to do the management on the forest stands so that the trees that are healthy and good, like the oaks and the maples and the...
so far we haven't hit an insect that's messing them up too much, right?
Apparently not. And the maple trees, they have a succession where they'll get planted in the forests where there are heavy canopy, where you'll get them sprouting up down the bottom because they seem to survive. So that's
even in the shade you're talking about. Okay, yeah.
If you go up to Hartwick Pines, you'll see that a lot of the old growth forest up there is starting to die out, and they're being succeeded by maples. you see a lot of the little maples down at the bottom of the forest.
That's a big thing. We're in Michigan here, and that's one of the big things. When back in the 1880s or so, 1870s, 1880s, we pretty much chopped down all the conifers, pine trees, if you will. There's the old thing that Michigan actually housed the West. Basically, a lot of the houses were built with Michigan lumber. Now, of course, Michigan, the West has all their own lumber, but we learned how to replant trees. But there's a couple of stands of old growth forest. One's up in Porcupine Mountain area, and the other one's Hartwood Pines. But I tell people, I says, even if you don't cut a tree down, the longest they're going to live is about 200 years.
Right.
We had one that was, I think, close to 300 years old.
Yeah.
It was the monarch pine. But that's really rare. Most of them are dead within 100, 150 years anyway. So that's a real problem.
There's another stand of old growth forest is on Manitou Island.
Oh, I didn't think about that one. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So have you been there?
I've been over there.
I've never been there.
Over in the corner over. You can view where the shipwreck is off the island, and in that stand right there is a little grove of old growth forest.
But see, after 300 years, they'll be dead anyway.
Right.
And what you're hoping is if you plant trees, like right now, the trees that were planted 100 years ago, when they started doing that again, they're getting pretty big size. We have actually, in some respects, more trees now than we ever did, but they're not old growth. I mean, most of them are, but some of them are pretty old. Some of them, Doug, are 50, 60, 70 years old. That's pretty good size. But anyway, so Doug, my trees that were infected with this beetle, it was a pine tree, a white pine. So even the conifers are not exempt. Right. The elms have been wiped out. Doug, have you ever heard anything? Have they been able to rebreed or replant any elms?
I guess there's still elms around, but that's a problem. And the chestnut is.
I was going to mention that.
And my friend here, Kevin Rich, is talking about planting chestnuts, and that's kind of
that would be neat. I'd love to see that because you see the old chestnuts back in the turn of the century, turn of the from 1900s to 1800s.
Remember when we were in England? On the property that was the origin of my mother's family
Beautiful
name.
Looking trees.
Yeah,
it's what you think of a classic deciduous, type of tree as a chestnut, and I haven't seen them in Michigan ever. There may be some around, but I don't. The old song "Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire." I'd love to eat a chestnut roasting on. I don't even know what they taste like.
Right.
I've never seen a chestnut tree, but they're the old wonderful canopy that grows out like this and straight bark down there. I don't know. Did they ever use the chestnut for wood or furniture?
Oh yeah,
I thought they did.
Wood, yeah. So it's a shame that we see a lot of these things being decimated by these different blights. But I was discussing this with my friend Kevin just this afternoon. And he was saying that these beetles and these insects all are have their purpose in terms of working on decomposing, the dead things or dead or dying things.
Of course, they cause a lot of things to have to be decomposed. That's the problem.
Right. But that's their ultimate purpose when they were. This brings up the question: are these really pernicious insects, or are they something that God actually created in the beginning, or were they something that God allowed to be mutated to be a little bit nasty and mean? And I think part of the problem that we have is twofold. One is that there's mutations that cause things like bugs, like they cause tetanus, Well, you have a mutation of a good bug that went bad, and so it creates a poison instead of an enzyme.
Or how about the mosquito?
Right, yeah.
Okay, the mosquito, we know that at least one half of the population, the male population of the mosquito, does not suck blood. It's only the female, okay? They drink sap or something, or they suck for nutrients. So the question is, were they all benign, and then at the fall were they mutated? Guess what? We're not going to know the answer to that.
Right, we can only speculate in terms of this. We only know this fallen world that we have and our Bible explains this. It explains that there is a world that has fallen, that came about as a result of the curse. And there's also in the Bible, it talks about like Deuteronomy chapter 28, where if you do all these things, you'll be blessed beyond measure.
Was that Deuteronomy? Is that 19? What, no,
It's 28, I think.
28. Okay, all right.
But then it gives a whole list of things you'll be blessed with. But then if you don't do these things to follow God's law,
There's all these curses.
then you have all these curses that fall upon you. And I'm wondering if we are reaping some of this a little bit, well, a whole lot in terms of why we're seeing. Now, if you remember Israel back in the day was the Fertile Crescent. That was the place where everything grew very well. Go there today.
Pretty much desert.
It's pretty much all desert. And
I mean, Israel, the modern Israel, has been able to salvage a lot through irrigation and a lot of de-rockifying, taking rocks out, and they've done quite an amazing thing to make that sort of a country that blooms in the desert. It's probably why everybody around them is so jealous of them, because they haven't done that,
Yeah.
But the point of it is that yes, it's the whole area is a desert region. We talked about some of that stuff years ago with one of our favorite guys. I haven't seen him in years, Dr. Eric von Fange, about the desertification of the world after the flood.
He's in heaven now.
Oh, is he gone? I didn't know if he passed away.
Well, he was in his 90s when he passed.
I know.
A couple of years ago.
When was this, Doug?
Just a couple of years ago.
Oh, so it was a couple of years ago. He was one of my favorite guys. He was up there. He had a good run. Wrote a lot of neat things, and I felt privileged to know him and do that. And so anyway, but he talked about the world after the flood, and between the flood and even during the times of Abraham, were pretty fertile, and then things got worse and worse and worse. So we know that kind of stuff does happen, Doug. We see. I find it interesting that the United States, so many of these insects and diseases and we don't seem to be resistant to anything here. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and it's kind of like China and Europe. They've already already went through this stuff for centuries, so they've gotten their resistance. And yeah, they'll give you a tree or a token tree or two, but they get over here and they wipe everything out. And I know that seemed to be that same way with human pestilences. When we came over here, the native peoples had no resistance to a lot of the disease we had, and decimated them. And of course, people want to blame all the white people. Well, it's just that the white people already had the extermination centuries ago during the Black Plagues and 100 other things. They already built. The people that survived were the resistant ones, and the ones over here weren't. And it feels the same way with the plants, Doug.
Right.
But all of that still goes back to issues of the fall
and
the redemption. Yeah. And we read about that with, how things that we think are so beautiful, and yet they can be taken out in an instant.
They can be, yes.
And those are things that really it's troubling, because Doug, I tell you what, we've talked about this many times on the show, but it's always worth repeating. If you're an old Earth creationist or you're an evolutionist, I understand you, because you basically don't believe in God anyway. You might believe in Him in some far off, distant, unapproachable, undoable thing, but basically you don't believe in God. And then you have the creationists, though, old Earth creationists. And Doug, I was at a retreat this weekend. That's the one thing is how do you get around death and dying before Adam and Eve were around? I mean, if you do that, then why are you even? Most creationists are Christians.
Right.
Why would you even think that Christ you've negated the entire reason for the sacrifice on the cross? Not the entire reason, but a big chunk of it, when it says that all creation was subjected to futility and death because of the sin of man, of Adam, bringing death into the world.
Anyway, Rich, I want to show you this little video clip that we saw.
Are we ready to do that now? Okay.
Because what it shows is what we did up there to what they're doing now to manage the forest, and they've got this machine that looks like a crane with this cucumber husker on the end.
So what does it do though? Before
well, what it does is you go to the tree, and it'll clamp around the tree, and then there's rollers down at the bottom.
Okay.
And on the bottom, very bottom, is a chainsaw. And so what it does is it grabs onto the tree, and then off on the bottom, it picks up the tree, just gently tips it over, and then goes zoom, 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 zoom. And about 3 minutes time, you've got the tree all cut up.
Debarked and de-limbed and...
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. So
At least you're not turning it into a toothpick like they did the old Bugs Bunny cartoons.
You're right.
Remember
Yeah.
those? Take a whole tree and with one toothpick at the end of it. No, they're not doing that. So, Doug, well, I guess without any further ado, let's show the video.
Okay. Anyway, this is what happens when you have the right tools to do the job.
Sure.
There's this machine costs $560,000, and I got into the cab of it, and it's sort of like a space machine, you know. It looks like something out of
They didn't trust you to operate this machine, did they?
Well, no, but I
Okay.
sat in it, and it's got a...
Okay. Just checking.
But it's got all these controls, and it's actually air conditioned, and it's got a computer. You can watch the internet while you're doing it. And
So how many loggers does this machine take the place of?
let's figure it out. If you got two guys with the handsaw, you know.
Or even if you got a chainsaw. You know?
Right, even with a chainsaw, this really beats the heck out of that. But it costs quite a few shekels
To start with, yeah, but you know, a whole forest, what the heck, you know? How fast does it do it in, Doug?
Well, it took 3 minutes to take down this tree.
Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
We have a lot of questions concerning why we have these different things. It's sort of like the whole sin question altogether. Why did God do it this way? Why did God just make man, and we could do anything we want, and
Right.
That's really the way that we would rather do it. We really wouldn't want to mess around with all this sin stuff. Why does the sin actually exist? Why did he allow this to come about? And
I mean, I've asked those questions. I mean, even when you go into the scriptures, it seemed to allude to the origin of how Satan got to be who he was.
right.
So, well, wow, Lord, you created him. Why did this happen? You know, Don't know. I don't have it doesn't really explain a lot of that stuff. And
I think the only thing...
Doug, we understand us, though.
Right.
He gave us a will to choose. He gave us
Right.
the power to choose because he wanted to actually make us in his image. And he wanted us to be like him through what we, how we live and who we have.
And he wanted us to choose him of our own free will and not be a robot. And that's really what I think the whole issue is we don't, he doesn't want us to be robots. He wants, and these choices happen continuously throughout our life. And that's what makes it interesting. This also gets into the Calvinist Arminian debate.
Well, yeah, because it does. I mean, let's face it. We got into that over this weekend at the retreat a little bit, but it's like you got people that are 5-point Calvinists. I'm about a 2.5. But I'm not a total free willer in the way a lot of people teach it. Those are theological and doctrinal things that are fun to talk about. But the reality is that, however it is possible, I believe God places it in all human beings because of what Christ did. But the fact of the matter is, this plan was in existence before Adam sinned. I mean, that's kind of neat, You know
what a Calvinist always says after he falls down the stairs?
Oh, yeah, I know this joke, but go ahead. Tell the audience.
I'm glad that's over with.
I'm glad that's over. Why because he was destined to fall down. Yeah,
destined to fall down the stairs.
I have a feeling we probably misunderstand what he was trying to teach. But yeah, the point of it is that God knows the end from the beginning. Though that is. I don't care whether you're the staunchest Armenian or the staunchest Calvinist. God knows the end from the beginning, and so the point of it is He's made provision for us in the work of the cross through the death and resurrection of His Son.
And how do we get on this subject, Rich?
Because you started it. No. We were talking about the fall, and I guess really the fall of Adam and Eve, which includes all of us because we were genetically inside of them. It affects not only us but all creation. Was that a good segue, Doug? You know that was good.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, it does. It affects everything: the universe, the planets, the grass, the beasts of the field. Everything was affected because those beings that were made in His very image, Adam and Eve, failed to do what they needed to do. And not only failed to do what they needed to do, but they actually rebelled against what they were supposed to do. Okay? And consequently, we are paying a price for that. But it's not a price that is totally, like I said, we're subjected to futility, but with hope. It's interesting. There's a myth, Doug. We're going to talk about going far afield. We only got a couple minutes left. This won't take long, but Pandora's box is basically an Adam and Eve story.
It is, yeah.
It's myth because this woman opens up the box, right? You always like to blame the women, okay? Adam is really the idiot because Eve was deceived. Adam was willful.
Right.
And that's why there's a price to be paid on both sides. But she opens the box, and all these horrible calamities come out. But at the end of at the last thing that comes out of Pandora's box is what?
Hope, right?
Hope. And that's what we have in the story of the seed of the woman smashing the head of the serpent. And that's what Jesus did at the cross. But the fall is very real, even though, Doug, we are post-Christ in the sense of His sacrifice in this physical earth happened 2,000 years ago. Nevertheless, until the consummation of the age, the results of the fall through Adam are still in evidence. That's why people could believe that it's always been this way. But it wasn't.
One thing I wanted to mention before we go is that insects really are testimonies of God's creation because of their function of, it pollinates, cleans up the environment. It really does a lot in the recycling of the things that are dead, and it does. They have all their function, but they also have a very interesting life cycle that defies the evolutionary explanation. They go from a egg to a larva to a pupa to a moth, and it's just an amazing transformation in each of these different things. Where you have something in an egg that's just juice and jelly, and it consolidates to become a bird. Or
I love the moth butterfly You know, the monarch butterfly.
Right.
That's an amazing thing. You know, and Doug, obviously, we have a lot of things we talk about. We deal with the fall, and we deal with, like, things, recycling stuff, and we're talking about death and dying, and there's a big topic about, is there a difference between biological life and biblical life?
Right.
And that's a topic really for another day. We won't get into that now, but there is a difference. But nevertheless, even things that are maybe not biblically alive still suffer the results of the curse.
They
still
yeah.
fall. We have thorns and thistles. We have poisonous plants, as well as animals and all that kind of stuff. Things that kill things that really should be living and doing well, and they, out of nowhere, something's beautiful, it gets turns into a dead tree that takes out power lines, or these wonderful pine trees which you love to see, and then suddenly the whole tops are all brown and dead. And those are things that are a result. But we are living in a world, Doug, where we can still choose this day whom we will serve.
Right, yeah.
And we can choose life, okay? Even though we see evidence of death around us, we can choose life. And I think that's the message we have in our show, really, Doug. Yes, evolution, there was a fall, but there was a redemptive act that happened, and a full redemptive act that's going to happen. So I think that's kind of neat.
And I hope you enjoyed our time on Revolution Against Evolution. We'll see you next time.